Hi guys, I'm Michelle. I'm a licensed massage therapist in Washington, and I bring you MBLEx resources here on YouTube. I have tons of videos, and then on my website, in the link in the description and in the pinned comment below, you're gonna find a huge list of lots of stuff that I have for you to help you to tackle that massage and bodywork licensing exam, including free courses, study guides, practice tests, and then I have a wonderful course to help you to be able to streamline your way through getting ready for the MBLEx in 30 days. That's wonderful. It's called MBLEx Refresh. Check that out. And I have a 10 test bundle that's over 1,000 unique practice questions based on all the research that I've done in a bunch of different massage and bodywork texts. So check out those resources and see if they could work for you. In the meantime, today we're going to be going on with our anatomy and physiology sequence, and we're going to be bringing a bunch of information together from the nervous system and from the skeletal muscle system. We're going to go do a deep dive into fascia, how it works, and why it's so important to us as body workers. Something that's really important that integrates these concepts that are behind the skeletal muscle system and the nervous system is that 80% of your sensory receptors live in your fascia. So that's why it's so important to us as body workers to understand how fascia works. So in this webinar, we're going to be talking about tensegrity and fascial layers and organization. We're going to be talking about fascial anatomy. These are all concepts that I explored a little bit in the initial video on the skeletal muscle system, but I'm going to go a little bit deeper to help give a fuller understanding, and I'm going to integrate that with understanding patterns and myofascial chains and how they run through our body, transverse planes of myofascial hammocks, I suppose that's how to say it, and then mechanical properties of fascia, how it's plastic and it can mold into what we want it to be, and then fascia as a sensory organ finally. And then we're going to do some practice questions at the end. So if all of this sounds like stuff that you need to understand at a deeper level, which I think you will because you will be tested on concepts of fascia, then go ahead and stick around to the end of the video and I will see you as we go over. Fascia is the tissue that unites us. It's the three-dimensional continuum of soft collagen-containing connective tissue that surrounds, interweaves between, and interpenetrates organs, muscles, bones, and nerves. This incredible network is what holds the body together, linking every structure into one unified, responsive system. For massage therapists and body workers, understanding fascia is essential. It explains how restriction in one area can cause pain or dysfunction in another, why proper assessment and pressure techniques matter, and how touch can restore balance throughout the entire body. When we view the fascial system as an integrated whole, we begin to see the body not as separate parts, but as a living, communicating web that shapes every movement and sensation. So, tensegrity, what is that? We talked about that a little bit in the video on skeletal muscle. That would be the introductory video. Tensegrity is a word combining two words, tension and integrity, coined by R. Buckminster Fuller, who is an architect. He created these sculptural buildings and actual sculptures that used a combination of cables and poles to build structures that when they were pushed down on, they would not compress. So it looks like that this structure would be smashable, but it's not. And it's not that these tension wires are solid, they are movable. But when they all work together with these cords going in all these different crazy directions, it holds the structure upright. So in our bodies, gravity would be the force, like the hand pushing down. Gravity is the force trying to pull your body downward. But there are these cables that are your muscles and the fascia and the tendons and the ligaments. And then there are the bones that are these stick structures. And between the tension of your postural muscles and the composition of the fascia, your body will stay upright and you'll be able to move. But the flip side of that, the negative part of that, is that when there is an injury to one part of the body, it affects the whole
system. So if you have injured your gastrocnemius, your calf muscle, it's going to affect your hip. That's going to affect your back, and so on and so forth. The whole system is affected negatively if something is impacted anywhere in the body. So we're going to take a step back and we're going to look at these layers and how fascia is organized so that we understand how these cables keep us in the upright position and help us to be able to do what we need to do. So just as a tensegrity depends on balanced tension throughout the body, that balance is maintained through layers of fascia that organize and connect every structure. These layers form a continuous sheath from the surface of the skin to the deepest organs, allowing tension and movement to be transmitted seamlessly throughout the body. So first of all, I want to say fascia is one organism. It's not a packet here and a packet there, or different kinds of fascia here and different kinds of fascia there. It's all connected into one structure. And it has pockets that all the other fibers live in. That's why they call it connective tissue. It connects everything together. So to put it briefly, there are two different kinds of fascia that we need to be concerned about, and that's the superficial fascia, which is the fascia that anchors the epidermis and the dermis to the rest of the body. So if you were to gently touch the surface of your skin, you can wiggle it around a little bit. That would be the epidermis and dermis. But the stuff that is, if you try to drag that skin a little bit, what's stopping you from dragging that skin or stretching it on forever is the fascia holding that tissue onto the body. And then deeper, we have the fascia that organizes and separates muscles and organs. So I'm going to show you these packets here. This is a transverse cut of the cervical spine. And so we have the cervical vertebrae here, and then we have like the windpipe and the food pipe, the esophagus here, and we have some blood vessels here, and then the muscles that go around them, and then on the outside we'll have the outside layer of the what they call pannicular fascia. That's that superficial layer I talked about that holds the epidermis and dermis onto the body. And then we have the axial fascia, which is the the packet that holds the muscular tissue. So if we're looking at this red packet of muscles, this is going to be the posterior part right here. And this white stuff would be your epidermis. And inside, surrounding the fascicles, would be not epidermis, epimysium. The epimysium is surrounding the whole muscle. Inside, surrounding each of the fascicles, would be the perimysium, and deeper inside, surrounding the myofibrils or the muscle fibers, would be the endomysium. So each of those are an axial fascial layer. Then we have the visceral fascia, which is enveloping organs and the serous membrane inside of our abdominal cavity. And so this yellow ring surrounding this area, let's say this tissue surrounding the windpipe would be the thyroid. So there's a layer of fascia that's enveloping that, and that would be a visceral fascia. And then finally we have meningeal fascia, which surrounds the brain and the spinal cord. Here we have, in the cutout, we have a little cut of the spinal cord. Surrounding that is going to be your meningeal fascia. Each of these kinds of fascia will have a different structure depending on what the need for it is. So fascia can be loose and it can be dense. It just depends on what it needs. And then finally aponeurotic connections. That's going to be like your ligamentum nuchae and the lumbosacral aponeurosis. Those are both examples of disorganized connective tissue that's weaving and webbing all of these muscle fibers and attaching them to the spinous processes. So we have fascia that runs vertically, and we also have fascia that runs horizontally, and that web is what keeps our structure stable. Whoop, went too far. This one right here, that web of the cables going in all the different directions is what we have. And so there was an anatomist named Thomas Myers who described these connective tissues as continuities, or connective tissue continuities as myofascial meridians or trains. So how the lines ran. So he studied, he did dissections of cadavers and found that this is the directions that they went in. So there's superficial and deep lines of fascia that are holding our bodies upright. So vertical, also spiral, and then there's also horizontal patterns that help us to be able to move. Now, regarding meridians and their connection with Oriental medicine meridians in either Ayurveda or Chinese medicine, considering that that electrical signals do go through fascia, because 80% of our neurons, our sensory neurons, are living in our fascia. So considering that those electrical signals are happening, it's really easy to see how those meridians can be connected to, of those ancient philosophies can be connected to our myofascial meridians. But Eastern and Western medicine have not made those connections. And in the massage and bodywork licensing exam, you're not going to be tested on making those connections. But it's just a little aside that I think is very interesting. So yeah, this person is stretching their client's calf or gastrocnemius. And what happens is they go to stretch that gastroc there. It's going to affect the line of pull all the way up to the cranium, to that occipital frontal aponeurosis on top of the cranium. It's going to affect that all the way up the train in this philosophy. Okay, and then not only are there those vertical and spiral bands, we have the horizontal bands that go at eye level, chin level, collar, chest, umbilical, inguinal, and groin. So it's the same kind of network as the vertical and spiral, but they also go horizontally. And then in addition to that, we have these fascial diaphragms at each of these, at the base of each of these organ collections that help to hold everything in place. And that's going to be a denser fascial tissue. For example, like the aponeurosis, so it's its own kind of retinacula that separates each packet. So we have one at the base of the cranium that holds the brains in. We have one at the top of the spinal cavity. They call that the thoracic inlet. Then we have the actual diaphragm, the respiratory diaphragm. Even though it does have some connective tissue, it has some contractile tissue, it is quite a bit of fascia. And then at the base of our pelvic cavity, our urogenital area, we have a pelvic cavity diaphragm. So the interplay between all of these trains and planes of fascial networks, between all of that, that's what allows our body to stay upright when we need to. And it's also what creates the radiation of musculoskeletal issues throughout the body. When you have a problem with your foot, you're going to feel it in your back, thanks to Tensegrity. So just putting that all together. Now we're going to go on to talk about the way that fascia works and its mechanical properties, but we have to start at the beginning with talking about fascial anatomy. So it's classified as a disorganized fibrous connective tissue. So it's made of elastin and collagen, and then the ground substance, which is mostly water, but a little bit of a molecule called glucosamine. I hate saying this word, glucosaminoglycans. That it's all the liquid all up inside it. Let's pretend that the black is elastin, and let's pretend that the pink is the collagen fibers, and it's all squiggly and squiggly. Organized fibrous connective tissue would be your tendons and your ligaments, and that's how they are different from each other. So I talked about ground substance, lubricating the fibers of the fascia and also of our contractile tissue. Elastin provides the stretch and recoil that makes fascia what it is. And also the most important part of fascial anatomy is the tropocollagen. It is a triple helix spiral of these proteins that will stay firm unless tension is applied. So you apply tension and pressure to it and warmth, and those fibers will start to unwind. And when the force is removed, it will coil back up together and retain its original shape. So it gives our tissues, for us as people who work on muscles, it gives our muscles the strength that it needs so it doesn't stay squishy. Like it would be totally floppy without fascia holding it together, retaining that triple helix coil of holding everything together. But it can be softenable. Is that a word? So fascia is not static. It's a living tissue that responds to movement and pressure. Here are the 3 mechanical properties of fascia that you're going to need to know for the MBLEx. Viscoelasticity. Visco meaning it stretches under load, and elasticity means it can return to its original shape. It will not stretch unless you add warmth and pressure to it and movement. Thixotropy means it can become more fluid when it's warmed or moved around, and more gel-like when it's still. And that's thanks to that ground substance. But it will be more solid when it's still, and it will be more fluid when you move. Just like that goo that kids are playing with, where you like go to stretch it slowly and it will stretch and stretch and stretch, and you go to pull it fast and it'll snap. Thixotropic would be a term for that. And finally, piezoelectricity is referring to when you go to massage somebody, they call that mechanical stress, creates an electrical charge that influences cell activity and tissue repair, specifically in our contractile tissue, our muscle tissue. So when you go to massage somebody, it's like sparkle, sparkle, sparkle. And that actually is beneficial for our muscles. Pretty cool. And then finally, fascial plasticity, which is not considered, like the textbooks, the A&P textbooks that I looked at did not put plasticity under the umbrella of the mechanical properties of fascia, but I kind of consider it a mechanical property in that fascia can remodel and adapt over time, depending on how you use it. So over time, you can train your musculature to behave in the way that you want it to, because fascia will adapt to it. Just as this bonsai has adapted to the tension rods that the artist has used to train that muscle to be in its shape. And for example, if you're slouching at a desk all the time, then the fascia that's holding your pecs is going to become shorter and shorter and shorter. And when you go to stand up straight, it's not going to feel comfortable. It's going to take a lot of energy for you to pull back. And the same thing happens in your upper back. Your rhomboids are going to become stretched and stretched and stretched if you're slouching at a desk all the time. And it's harder for those muscles to be able to contract because the fascia has stretched out. That's why they call it weak, a weak muscle. So chronic postures, repetitive use, or injury can change the density and orientation of fascia. So our job is to help to restore the proper shape of our clients' bodies through manipulating fascia. And finally, really important about fascia is that it is a sensory organ. 80% of the body's sensory receptors live in the fascia. That is a really cool thing. So 4 main receptor types that live in fascia. Golgi receptors live in the fascia that connects the muscle, the contractile tissue to the tendon, and those are called Golgi receptors. And then we have the Pacinian or Pacinian corpuscles and the Ruffini corpuscles or Ruffini endings. They detect pressure and vibration, and they are in those deeper layers under the skin. And then the interstitial or free nerve endings that live all over our bodies are sensitive to chemical pressure and pain stimuli, and that's all in the fascia. So, fascia and homeostasis. Let me wrap my mind around how I'm going to explain this about neurofascial loops, that they bridge the gap between the body and the mind, between our nervous system and the tissue in our body. When we are feeling stress, our muscles will tighten up, which further creates a sympathetic response. So our muscles get tight, which sends a message to the fascia, where most of our nerve endings are, that something's wrong and we need to be worried and we need to be in fight or flight. And so other organs in our bodies are affected by that sympathetic response because we have tension in our muscles. Alternatively, if our muscles become relaxed, that starts a cascade into the parasympathetic response, which has positive benefits for homeostasis in our whole body. General well-being is produced by the parasympathetic response. So as manual therapists, we are working to relax somebody's tension, the tension in the fascial systems in someone's body, which is going to take them out of that sympathetic response and put them in the parasympathetic response. The more they go into ease and relaxation, the more their whole body is going into well-being. And that's what a neurofascial loop is. So it's like the loop of getting worse and worse and worse. The more tense you are, the more tense you get, the more you go into fight or flight. That's a spiral that goes up and up and up. And then for opposite, for the parasympathetic response, the more physical ease we have, the more we go into rest and digest. Last thing I want to mention is that some research has found that there are actually smooth muscle cells in the fascia, and specifically in the visceral, that's the organ fascia, and the vascular regions in our blood vessels, that they are capable of some low-level contraction. So that's pretty cool. But you probably won't be tested on that on the MBLEx. So yeah, fascia is a living matrix, not just connective tissue. It's a living communication network linking structure, sensation, and movement. Ta-da! Let's go ahead and start doing some MBLEx questions. So let's get started. Which statement best describes the relationship between fascia and the autonomic nervous system? A, fascia transmits only voluntary signals from the brain, which isn't true. It also helps to transmit involuntary reflexes. So B, fascia communicates mechanical and sensory input that can influence autonomic tone. We just learned about that. C, the autonomic nervous system only controls skeletal muscle, not fascia, which is not true. It also has, there are also sensory neurons that affect the autonomic system. And then fascia and the autonomic nervous system function independently, which is not true. So I like B the best. Fascia communicates mechanical and sensory input that can influence autonomic tone. Fascia contains sensory and autonomic nerve endings that constantly relay information about pressure and tension. This feedback affects sympathetic and parasympathetic tone. Massage and movement can therefore influence autonomic balance through fascial stimulation. Okay, this is an interesting question. So a client reports tingling in the thumb, index, and middle fingers, which horizontal fascial bands, sometimes called fascial diaphragms, primarily function to. What a confusing question. Very poorly written. I apologize about that. So what we're going to do is we're going to ignore that part of the tingling in the thumb, index, and middle fingers, except to say that if someone has those symptoms, I would relate that with thoracic outlet syndrome. And in the thoracic inlet, which is one of the fascial diaphragms, that's what I would be softening in order to try to release restrictions around the nerves that go through that area that innervate the thumb, index, and middle fingers. But the question is asking which horizontal fascial bands, sometimes called fascial diaphragms, primarily function to. And we're looking for the correct answer out of all of these. All right, so A, they horizontal fascial bands increase the contractile strength of deep muscles? No, they do not increase the strength of muscles in contraction. So B, restrict movement between compartments. That's true. Let's see what else we have. So they do keep the organs that are in the compartments where they should be. C, provide transverse stability and anchor vertical fascial lines. Ooh, I like that one. Okay. Provide transverse stability. Yes. They stabilize our bodies like the cables going crossways, and they anchor vertical fascial lines. So that's true too. They're holding those vertical meridians in place and then serve as passageways for arteries and veins only. So I think B is a little too vague. I like C the best. So I'm going to go with that because that is very true. So yes, that's what was chosen. And so the explanation would be the body's transverse fascial planes or fascial diaphragms act like internal retinacula, anchoring vertical lines of tension. These horizontal layers provide postural support and prevent collapse between regions. They help maintain overall structural balance within the fascial system. Okay, you're not going to get any trick questions on the MBLEx, so don't worry about that. Which statement best describes the microscopic structure of a collagen fiber found in fascia? Okay, we're looking for the best description of collagen fiber. So A, collagen fibers are made of parallel elastin chains that stretch easily under tension, which collagen and elastin are separate things. Okay, so collagen fibers, B, collagen fibers consist primarily of ground substance and calcium deposits. Well, that would be bone, not collagen fibers. C, collagen fibers are single, uncoiled protein strands that contract like muscle tissue. Not true. There's a tiny bit of smooth muscle tissue, but it doesn't add a lot of contractile strength, and that's only in specific structures. Let's see what D says. A collagen fiber is composed of bundled fibers made from twisted tropocollagen molecules. That is true. Twisted tropocollagen molecules. All right, D. That was the correct answer. Each collagen fiber is made of multiple fibrils, and each fibril is built from several tropocollagen molecules arranged in a triple helix formation. This twisted structure provides strength and limited flexibility. When tension is applied, the helix slightly unwinds, allowing fascia to extend without tearing. Let's do one more question. Which of the following inaccurately describes the mechanical properties of fascia? Which is not true. Okay, so we have 3 correct answers and 1 wrong answer. So A, viscoelasticity allows fascia to lengthen under tension and slowly return to its original shape. True. Visco meaning softening, elastic means it can go back. B, thixotropy means fascia becomes more fluid and pliable with movement or warmth. That is true. C, piezoelasticity refers to the fascia's ability to generate electrical charges in response to mechanical stress. That is true. So let's look at D. Plasticity means fascia cannot remodel or adapt once formed, which is not true. Plasticity means that it can remodel or adapt into new forms. So D would be the answer to circle, being the incorrect answer. Fascia demonstrates viscoelastic, thixotropic, and piezoelectric properties, which allow it to respond and adapt to pressure, movement, and tension. These characteristics make fascia a dynamic, self-regulating tissue that supports movement and healing. Statement D is incorrect because fascia is highly adaptable and can remodel in response to sustained tension or body work. And that's going to close out this video. I hope you liked it. And make sure and subscribe so you can be in the loop for more anatomy and physiology videos and all the videos that I'm creating to help you to pass that MBLEx. And make sure and give the video a thumbs up so that your peers that are coming through and trying to get the information they need in order to become body workers can get it. And I will see you guys in the next video. Toodaloo.